Get started today with a comprehensive team leader toolkit and take your remote or hybrid team to the next level. Learn more at www.set2lead.com.
Welcome to the Set to Lead podcast, the online mentoring platform for emerging and current leaders. My name is Marianne Samdi, leadership coach and talent development expert, and I will be your host. Hello, everyone. On today's show, I've invited Daniel Felt. He's going to discuss ways to best develop your team for company success. But before we get started, I'm going to let him tell the audience a little bit about his background and what inspired him to take the CEO path in life.
I grew up on a farm in Midwest Minnesota, very entrepreneurship. My parents, we were the family eating ramen noodles and Roma pizzas. I had 5 siblings. So grew up on a farm, and I watched my parents build, of all things, actually a dog business. They started from, just one dog in 1980. And then today they sell about 6 or 7 litters throughout the year worth of puppies. They're sold out forever. It's really hard to get on their waiting list. And they've just really built a great reputation for raising a dog ethically and correctly. And so they're doing really great. And through that experience and watching your parents, understand the concept of, hey, the harder I work, the more reward we get, was awesome for me. And it really gave me the confidence to get to the point where going through college and then working for, I actually worked for an agricultural company. They sell about 8 million chicken eggs in a day. So very large production, and creating all the systems and processes. My main job was just to create SOPs all day long. And from there, my brother recruited me to work in the home service industry. He cleans windows and puts up holiday lights and does an incredible job. We doubled his business in 2 years. And today he's probably one of the largest companies in the nation that's individually owned, doing holiday lights and windows. And from there, the idea came up to start my own company. And I just really wanted the freedom of being an entrepreneur. I wanted to have control of my schedule, control of my life, and I was willing to take that risk. I was mid-20s, and I had a little bit of equity in my house, so I took out an equity line against my home that I could dip into if I needed, and I took the leap.
What an interesting background. I have a few questions, if you don't mind, around your background. So first, I wanted to ask, was there any backlash with your parents for not wanting to continue on in their business?
One thing that I'm really fortunate about is I look at my childhood and the way I was raised. And as I get to know other people and you hear more and more stories, you meet, all the people in your circle and your sphere, I realize how fortunate I am to have been raised by parents that were motivating, they were loving, they were encouraging. I never had anything weird happen to me. I was never like verbally assaulted, physically assaulted. I was really raised in a great home, and it was very supportive. And at a very young age, I started training horses actually for other kids in 4-H. And I did do a little bit of the dog business. I would board dogs. So that kind of helped me start Cure a Home. I would board dogs, and I got to the point with my clientele where we had such a great relationship. I had heated and an AC, a temperature controlled garage at my home. And it got to the point where people would say, hey, Daniel, here's the dates that we're going on vacation. And I'd say, sounds good. You can drop your dog off anytime you want. I have a spot set up for them in the garage. And all my routine clients, they had their own garage codes, and it was a great system. And that actually ended up making about $40,000 a year for me, boarding and training dogs, and that was that's like a side hustle for me. Today, my parents still breed dogs. And the cool thing about having a family of 6 is 2 of my sisters are actually continuing on with that business. And I think that running that business would have been great, but it wasn't for me due to the fact that you're kind of a dairy farmer. And I say that because when you're a dairy farmer, you have to milk cows twice a day, every day. And that's kind of how it is with dogs. At the bare bones, you got to let them out twice a day, every single day, walk them, feed them water, make sure everything's going well. And I just wanted to be able to travel a little bit more and have a little more freedom. I didn't want to be tied in. And I also wanted to be able to scale a business. And at the quality that they're breeding dogs, I think you can grow it and you can make a great income. I just wanted unlimited boundaries. And so for that reason, I didn't carry on that business.
Understood. So, you're very fortunate that you didn't have any major drama or trauma growing up with your parents. Congratulations on that. I don't
Yeah, thank
believe
you.
that's everybody's story.
Correct.
What breeds were you? What type of dogs were you guys breeding?
Yeah, they focus 100% on golden retrievers. They're registered with the AKC and part of the Minnesota Purebred Dog Breeders Association. They did for a small stint breed long-haired miniature dachshunds, and I had a little dog named Johan that was my best buddy growing up, and we did everything together. He was a really nice little dog. So my siblings, my older sisters, they wanted in their words, they wanted a puppy that stayed a puppy. And so for about 10 or 15 years of that stint, they would have one litter a year of miniature dachshunds. But today it's only golden retrievers.
Wow. And then you mentioned really 8 million chicken eggs a day?
Yeah, they're one of the top egg producers in the country. They have 5 farms, millions of chickens at each one. It's a
Wow.
fascinating operation to watch, a couple million eggs at each farm go through that process, and they're all, they're go through the candle and their size to make sure everything's healthy. It's amazing what goes into getting an egg to your table. It's a really complex process, but they do it really well.
That could be a whole nother conversation right there that
Yeah,
we'll have to have another day because
most
I
definitely.
have a lot of things are coming to mind regarding the chickens, but we'll have to explore that. So, question for you. If you had to start your particular company all over again from scratch, because like we mentioned, you have your own thing going on, what would you do differently in terms of how you build and grow the team?
Yeah, I think what I would have done is a little more market research, because today what we primarily focus on is we've got about 800 clients that we visit quarterly, and then we have about 49% of our business is one-time services like air duct cleaning, dryer vent cleaning, AC unit cleaning, and then we also sell licenses. So if you have an existing business, you could buy a license. We'll train you how to do everything, give you all the marketing material, basically like an answer sheet on how to run the business. But that wasn't the case 7 years ago when we started. We actually started off offering monthly visits and handyman services. It took me a little while to figure out that handyman is not profitable or scalable. That's a big thing that I really focus on is scaling. And so what I wish I would have done is talk to more people, because when you're an entrepreneur, you bring up an idea to different people, and so many people in your circle say, "That's such a great idea, Daniel. I love it." But then unfortunately not nearly as many actually pull out their checkbook and sign up. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's so important to be doing market research, and different people run different ideas for me. And I say, like, do they actually have their credit card out, and they're looking to buy the service, or is it just a good idea? Is it scalable? Is it profitable? So it probably took us about 1.5 to 2 years to really figure out that quarterly visits and air duct cleaning are the core services that are really needed to be done in the home services industry, and not so much handyman, because so many people have like their dad or the guy next door that does all this stuff for like, $40 an hour. And you can't have someone in the office and a guy in a truck that's logoed and all the equipment. You can't be go out there doing labor for $40 an hour plus insurance, all those things. It all adds up. It's not profitable. So it took us a while, and I probably could have saved 1.5 to 2 years of my unprofitable time in the business
Right.
by doing a little more market research and really asking a ton of people more and more questions, rather than being like, you know what, I got it, I'm invincible, I'm going to go out, I'm going to start doing this, and people will hire me.
How did you go about doing the market research eventually?
Yeah,
Mhm.
the most crucial conversation that I had was actually with a gentleman from my church, and I don't know the value of his home, but I'm gonna say roughly $3 million. So he's successful, also a business person, and he wasn't a customer, and he knew me well. Like there was for sure the trust there. So I think sometimes it's like, okay, you know me, you trust me, and so I asked him, could I buy you a cup of coffee? And I just want to know why you're not a customer. It's fine that you're not.
Mm.
I just want to know why you're not a customer. And I think that's so much better. I think a ton of people do a lot of research with their current customers, their current clients, but go find the person that isn't your customer, but they're qualified to be one, and start asking questions. Like, what is it that you need? Because we all have needs, in our lives. And it's like, what do you actually need? And he told me several key things that he wanted to be set up on auto pay, and we have that option. He thought monthly visits were pointless and we should switch to quarterly. And we did do that from his feedback, which completely changed my business. And he just didn't think that we needed as many items. And so from that, we now offer a la carte options. So you can select 1 to 34 different items. You don't have to get set into a package with us. And so his feedback alone, and I bet I talked to over 1,000 people in my first 2 years, just
Huh.
asking them questions about what's going on. And that narrowed down to the services that we provide today.
Interesting. Really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what would you say to people that just don't have Well, I mean, you're talking about you did some organic, informal surveys, right? Do
Yeah,
you see a
yeah.
lot of do you see a lot of people putting out a lot of cash to get this type of market research done these days?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's totally unnecessary. I mean, there's so many, like, go to your chamber, go to a networking group, go to your social circle, go to your church, just start asking people questions. Ask someone out for a $4 cup of coffee. Can I ask you a few questions? And because you're gonna get so much more info than if you send out like an email to 1,000 people or you hire a company to do this survey. And sure, if you're a Fortune 500 company, you can pay a company to do this research for you. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting from fresh, I mean, every penny counts. Like, you got to get straight to the horse's mouth in here. You got to know, why aren't you a customer? And if you are surveying your current customers, you got to know, what do they like, why they hire you, and if they want something changed, what would it be? Like, you got to know some of these really key important things.
Good, good. So now that you have, you learned from your mistakes, you finally solidified, the right offer, so you can make some profit. You also had to start really dealing with the people aspect of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can't retain your team, that also gets expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
With constant, with churn. You want to, isn't it true that you want to retain your employees uh, for the longest time possible, especially those employees that are the most productive?
Yes, most definitely. There's all these different stats out there on how much it costs to, hire a new employee, just from, the mistakes they may make or something like that. It can be as low as 2.5, 3,000. It can be, depending on the person, it can be $10,000, $15,000 just to replace that current person. And there's so many hidden costs involved, not only the recruitment costs, but just the hidden costs of training and the inefficiencies of that person. So doing so many little things to keep, really create like a team atmosphere, I think, is what people are looking for today. They want to know they're part of something, they're part of building something. And there's so many different strategies in place to get there. And every single person is different, but holding people accountable, I think we've tried all these different things. I've tried throwing the leash way out and saying, you're free, go do whatever you want. And what I've really found is that I think a lot of employees really want to know, what am I doing that's correct and what am I doing that's wrong? Like, tell me what direction to go and how to go there. And most people are going to do a really great job when you send them in the right direction and you guide them to get there and you allow them to do that with their skills and their expertise. So it's you still need to manage. I think a lot of people think, oh, like, there's no rules here, like, do whatever you want. But I think a lot of people do want to know, like, what's the speed limit on this road? Like, how fast can I go? And they want to know a few rules so they can really excel within those parameters.
Well, that's interesting. So when you think of the people skills that you need to be more successful with your team, what are those, especially from a CEO perspective? What people skills have really benefited you the most?
Yeah, I think providing consistency is key. Like, people want to know job security. One thing that we do with our team is I share all of our financials on a very regular basis, as frequently as monthly. Hey, here's how we're doing as a company. Here's what we profited. Here's what we're doing with that money. They want to know, like, what they're building part of. Additionally, we have a training meeting with our technicians every single morning for it lasts about 10 to 15 minutes. And that, if we had like an issue the day beforehand, we fix that so that same issue doesn't happen again. So again, it's kind of putting those parameters of, hey, we made a mistake. Here's how we do it correctly. But it's showing appreciation. If a technician makes a mistake, I don't blast that on our like internal private Facebook group or come to the tech meeting and say, hey, Jim, you screwed up. I pulled Jim aside and I said, Jim, hey, here's what's going on. What happened? Or I make a phone call, or my manager does. But when Jim does something right, that is blasted everywhere. Like, Facebook group, the team meeting, like donuts, energy drinks. My guys love energy drinks for some reason. Everyone thinks they want donuts, but it's energy drinks for days. And so it's getting to know your team and just bringing it in and say, hey, publicly, we're going to praise like crazy. Nice job. We hit this profit mark. We pulled on this number of clients. We got this many 5-star reviews. And it's just praising people and getting to know them and know what ticks and what do you not care about. And eventually you find a team of people that really, they hold each other accountable and they all want each other to win, but they're also competitive. They want to be the one who's getting that public praise. They want to be the one who's recognized for a 5-star review or an upsell or something like that.
Those are some great strategies. And guess what, Daniel? I think we found you another side hustle or business, because if all your employees like energy drinks, maybe that's the next business for you.
Yeah, well, I've thought on a very small scale getting a vending machine, so you buy them from, wholesale and you get them in there for, make a couple of cents on each one. But yeah, I'm pretty busy at the moment, but it might be something down the road.
Um, so let's shift over to recruitment for a minute. Thank you for sharing those people skills that you just mentioned. But in terms of recruiting, what strategies work best for recruiting your first few employees when you first started versus what you might be doing now?
Yeah, it's not all that different. Our very first employee was word of mouth. I think it's really scary to hire your first employee. And the best advice I can give you is hire someone part-time. They have such low expectations on an income, like hire someone who's like, hey, are you fine with 10 hours a week or 40? And they're like, yeah, I mean, if my schedule works, and then you kind of work around them and you schedule with them. So my first guy was part-time. I was volunteering with our church youth group, and this young man wanted to take a year off between high school and college. And it was the perfect fit. He could work on days that he didn't have anything else going on. And it was awesome. On average, he worked like 25, 30-hour weeks with me. And it was perfect. So the very first employee was word of mouth. Today, when we've recruited, a lot more than one, our best employee is someone who comes in who's recruited from a friend. And so we'll do things like, hey, we'll give depending on how desperate we are for an employee, like sometimes we get busy. Like we'll come in on Monday. It's like, whoa, leads are coming in like crazy, especially with seasonality and things like that. And so we'll do things like, hey, if we hire one of your friends that you referred to work here, we'll give you a $500 bonus after 90 days or $1,000 bonus after 90 days, like whatever it is. That's still our best. We have worked with recruiting agencies. The best agencies that we've worked with, rather than them adding on a percentage to their hourly pay, they just take a percentage right up front. So they'll take like 10% of your first year, for that employee. And we do so many things, like so many bonuses and tips and commissions for our technicians, that it's actually a pretty affordable route for us. And I didn't know that existed. I thought most agencies would take, like an extra like $5 per hour, which really cuts into your profit margins. So, so doing that 10%, there's different opportunities out there to help you get people. There's of course the normal, like the Indeeds and the, monster.com, or all those different ones that they're fine. And I think they're okay. But your word of mouth is always going to be your absolute best employee, in my opinion.
Has your recruitment efforts changed since the pandemic in a major way?
Yeah. After the pandemic, it's crazy. Sometimes a disaster, you can think that this is going to like ruin your business, but the pandemic was almost a blessing for us. We had a ton of people looking for work. We had a lot of work providing. A lot of people wanted to improve their air quality in their house, and so we were growing like crazy. And that still, through that, we had like tiers of friends. It was like a third tier friend from the original employee that was working for us. So that worked great. But then in 2021 and 2022, it was really difficult to find an employee. Like it seemed like no one wanted to work. So it was really challenging then. And we really had to put a lot of extra resources. We actually ended up hiring a full-time HR person at a certain point to just be recruiting and managing our team that we had, because we had got up to 52 employees at one point. And so we were doing all the things. We were like going in person to like a tech school or things like that, posting jobs, doing job fairs. And through all of that, still, I'm going to go back to my initial statement. Finding a friend of a current employee that's doing a good job at your company was the best way to get a technician on board.
I found that was interesting that you talked that you were part of FAIR. So that's a strategy that's still used these days. The career fair?
Yeah, yep. There's still career fairs that people are going to. It's so interesting because like I'll drive around and I'll see like now hiring signs everywhere, but then on like social media, I'll see someone post in like a community page that they're not hearing back from anyone, and they're applying for all these jobs, they're not getting anyone. And I go and I raise my hand. I'm like, hey, I'm always looking for great people. So and so there are job fairs. I think a lot of companies like they get too big too fast, and they're maybe not responding to these inquiries coming in through a website like Indeed, for example. And for us, we're still small enough to be able to respond to that very quickly and stay on top of things. Because people, like at a huge corporation, you submit your resume and then you have to fill out your entire resume again. And it's like, make it easy. Make it easy for people to hire your company. Make it easy for people to join your team. Like, don't make it so complicated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm wondering, for your particular business, how many generations are represented? Do you only hire those right out of high school, out of college? Is it across the spectrum? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, our primary technician, our average age is about 23. So we have a few that are a little bit younger and a few that are I think our oldest technician right now is about 33 years old. Whenever we've hired now, we don't say no to someone that's a certain age. If you're qualified, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. What we found is that people that are in their 40s and 50s working out in the field, they want more like a management position. And in our team, we don't need a lot of management because our technicians are set up for so much success. Like one guy can very easily manage 15 to 18 people very successfully, and each guy feels like they have the time and attention. However, in our office, when you call our office, our average age is in their like 50s and 60s. We have, because their customer service is top notch. Like they really care. They're in it to win. Like they care about the company's profit margins. They care about how well they're scheduled. Like they really care about their job. And so for office positions, when we've hired younger, and I'm a millennial, I'll admit it. I don't think I'm a typical millennial, but I'm a millennial, and I know it's a horrible term nowadays. But when we've hired millennials for the office, a lot of times they're looking for a job that it doesn't take a lot of effort. And at a small company, I hate to tell you, but you're going to have to pull your weight. Like you got to do your share. So it's not something where you can just clock in at 8 o'clock and then all of a sudden 5 o'clock rolls around, you're done for the day. Like you got to put forth an effort.
So do you ever have to tackle the generational gaps between those that are out in the field and how they coordinate and get along with those that are in the office? And also, I want to add another dynamic to the generational issues is, do you ever experience challenges with balancing how your younger team is dealing with the homeowners at the home?
Yeah, so our technicians get along really well with, right now it's all women that work on inside our office, like the coordinators, and they work along really well. But I also think that comes from the top down. Like the guys, like if they're complaining about something, like how you solve that problem. I don't just say, if Jim is complaining about Susie in the office, I don't say, oh yeah, Susie is doing a crap job. You're right, Jim. I say, Jim, how can we solve this problem? Like, does Susie know it's frustrating for you? And if so, why don't we go talk to her and see why is she doing this? And sure enough, like we'll go and she'll be like, oh yeah, you know what, Jim, you're right. I'm sorry, we had a customer cancel or reschedule, and then to fill that spot, I had to move someone. And that's why you had to drive 30 minutes rather than your typical 10 to 15. And he's like, oh yeah, sounds good, no problem. So rather than like letting these problems, muster into these huge problems, you just nip it right in the butt. And so we have a huge aspect on, hey, we're going to work together as a team. As for our technicians, dealing with homeowners, we focus so much on the customer service experience, and there's so many systems and processes that we put in place. For every single thing that we train our guys in to do, we have like mock conversations that the guys can be having. Like when we're cleaning your garbage disposal, for example, like I put facts in there that the guys can be talking to customers about, like the fact that their garbage disposal was invented in Racine, Wisconsin in 1927. Like who cares about that? But it's an interesting fact that the guys are now more knowledgeable. But the way that we pull up to a customer's home, the way that we knock on the door, after you knock on the door, our guys are trained to take several steps back, to like stand like a step or two below the stoop. They're trained to smile when that person is. So all these things, these guys are trained in so that we have a great customer experience. And we have customers ranging all over the place. I'm sure as young as, who knows, 18 for that are homeowners all the way up to 90s or in their hundreds. And everything in between. And the biggest thing that we really focus on is we're going to treat every single customer as if we were at our sister, our mom, or our grandma's house. And if you were at their house, how would you want them to be treated? And I've had technicians call me with like a scenario that's out of their control, that's completely different. And they say, what should I do? And I just say, if you were at your mom's house and there was a team there servicing their home, what would you want them to do? And they're like, oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I know what to do. I'll take care of it. Thanks. Bye. And it's amazing by just having that standard in place, you encourage your team to start thinking differently about the way that we service a client's home.
Absolutely. As a CEO, Daniel, how do you grow yourself? So I'm sure you have some innate leadership skills and some things just come naturally to you. Mm-hmm. But how have you developed yourself to become a better CEO and someone that really focuses on people to grow your business?
Yeah, I'd say there's two main things that have really come. I think I am very fortunate to have a natural like leadership instinct, and that's come from over time on the way my family dynamic was and being in sports and things like that. But today I've done two things that I think are extremely important. Number one is I'm surrounding myself with really incredible people. I'm not hanging out with people that I don't want to be like. I'm hanging out with people that are they're out there, they're doing it. They're really doing cool things in this world. And you become like the average 5 people that you hang out with. And the second thing that I'm doing is I'm consuming data and information as fast as I can. Last year, I listened to 52 different audiobooks, and you can cheat time. You can start listening to them faster. I listen to audiobooks at 1.7 times speed. And sometimes I talk a little too fast because I'm used to listening to these books, but people are sending me, then you start talking to people and they're like, oh, have you read this book? Have you listened to this podcast? And you start listening to more and more information. And then when an issue comes up in your life or in your job, you have that database of all that information that you've listened to, because these people that are writing books are experts. They wrote a book because they're really good at something, and you're getting all this stuff for $5 to $15 a book. You're getting information that's saving you thousands of dollars because you can dip into that and use that to make your business or the people around you better.
So basically, I hear you saying you're a lifelong learner.
Yes. Yeah. You're never done. The second you say, oh, I'm good enough at this, like, it's probably time to let someone else into that position, let someone else take over, because if you're not growing it's going to fade off. Your company is going to shrink. Like, you always have to be focusing on growing. And that goes for everything, my fitness, my family, the way that I run my business, all these things. There's so many things in your life that are measurable, and you always want to be getting just a little bit better each day.
So I think that's phenomenal. And I like the fact that you talked about audiobooks. I actually have a teenager, and my son, doesn't like to read.
Mm.
And I'm like, I don't understand how you can be successful in life without reading.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's just fundamental. But you don't have to necessarily read. You could listen to books these days, right?
Yeah, I would say of all the books that I consumed in the last year, I think I physically read about 2 or 3 of them, and the rest I listened to. I have about a 25-minute commute, and then just between driving around, networking events or whatever it may be. When I'm just alone in the vehicle, I barely ever had to take time outside of that to press play and like sit in a room alone or something like that. So it's amazing. There's a lot of free time. I call it Windshield University. There's a lot of time when you're driving around, and rather than listening to the radio or some things like that, throw on something that's going to make you a better person. And for each person, maybe it's a health podcast for one person, or a spiritual, religious, whatever it might be for you. Put something in, and there's so many great books out there that really will motivate you or give you the next step to do something really great in your business.
In addition to the audiobooks, is there anything else that you do for inspiration to stay focused and motivated for your personal and your business goals in addition to that?
Oh yeah, big time. I share my goals with people. I'm a huge believer in writing down goals. I write down goals. I sign up for races. I tell people that I'm going to do things, and it's I try to not do it like in an arrogant way. I try to tell people like, hey, here's the deal. I want to buy 4 short-term rentals this year, and I'm going to do it by the 31st. And if I don't, like, I failed. So then you have people coming up there, then they're asking you about it. Hey, how's that going? I sign up for the race. I'm training for another Ironman right now. It's in 3 months, and I'm kind of on a special training trip right now where I'm going to be working out about 4 to 5 hours a day while listening to these podcasts, these audiobooks. So I'm like double whammy, improving my mind and body at the same time. So to really go to the next level, surround yourself with people, ask them what their goals are, which is going to make them a better person. Share your goals and sign up for the race. You got to sign up for these things. You got to quit procrastinating, quit sitting down watching pointless TV at night. Like, keep learning and don't stop. You got to go sign up for the race. You got to go accomplish these goals that you've set in place, and you have to write it down. You got to write your goals down. It's so important.
For people who don't know, Daniel, tell them what the Ironman is all about.
Yeah, the Ironman is a triathlon, and it starts. You start with a 2.4 mile swim. You have 2 hours to complete that. After the swim, you jump on a bike, and that's 112 miles. And once you're done with that, you run a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. And the race starts at 7 a.m. and you have until midnight to finish. Otherwise, you're disqualified.
And how long have you been doing this, Daniel?
I'm a millennial. When I was in my early 20s, I did about 28 different triathlons. One of them was this Ironman distance, and I've ran about 6 or 7 marathons since then. And again, surround yourself with great people. One of my buddies was like, hey man, you're getting soft, and we gotta do something big here, and we gotta sign up for this Ironman. I was like, no, I can't do it. And I talked to my wife, and I have two young kids, 2.5 and 6 months old. And I said, I think I can do this without sacrificing company time or family time. And I'm going to do it by doing these things. And I laid out a training schedule. I'm going to do it in the mornings. I'm going to work out from 4 to 7 a.m. And I think I can do this without, sacrificing other things in my life. And she said, she believed me. So signed up for it. And that's going to be in a couple months here.
That's amazing. Please keep me posted on these events, because I'd love to follow it. I think it's awesome. I would never do that, but
Yeah.
I find it so admirable, someone who would be interested in that.
I think you have to be a little crazy. Like, at least, like, I think I'm a little nuts, and I don't know how far, but I've also heard people say that if you can define what crazy is, you're not actually crazy. So I don't know what level I'm on, but I'm for sure a little bit of a lunatic, and it's just trying to keep myself grounded a little bit. But yeah, it's a really fun event. It's amazing. If you ever get the opportunity to go watch a triathlon or an Ironman, even just being a spectator, the amount of energy that's there, it just makes you want to like kick down a door. It's awesome. It's a really fun event to be at.
I don't think you're crazy, but what I find admirable is that it's evident you like to push yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
you always want to go to the next level and figure out that turns you on.
Yeah.
So,
most definitely.
Yeah. So I admire that. I don't think it's necessarily crazy. But one last question I had for you, Daniel, if you don't mind, is you were saying that part of your regimen of being the best is hanging out with cool people. You want to hang out with eagles. For those that want to do the same thing, but they don't know where to go find those eagles, any suggestions?
Yeah, there's networking groups all over the place that you can join in that there's different levels of them. A lot of them are pretty cost efficient. You could, if you're just a normal everyday person, you can go to like a chamber event, your chamber of commerce. There's networking groups. I'm in one that's pretty much worldwide called BNI. My group happens to have 98 people in them, which is pretty large. But additionally, like, you can just reach out to people. Like, I manage my own LinkedIn. Like, if you send me a message, I'm going to see it. And as long as you're not trying to sell me something, which happens like 6 times a day, but I mentor, I think it's like 4 or 5 different people right now. We meet once a month, and they just fill me in. Hey, here's everything that's going on in my life. What do you think? And I mean, the one gal we started, it was like 14 months ago. She's like, I want to be a realtor. And today she made like $150,000 in her first 12 months being a realtor, because we just talk once a month, and she's like, this is awesome. I'm going to go do it. And so she's out there doing it just by surrounding yourself with someone else who's saying, hey, you can do this. It's not impossible. So there's so many people out there. Cold call someone who you admire. Send me a message on LinkedIn. My name is Daniel Felt. I will give you plenty of time. And I love helping other people. Anyone who's on their journey to success or currently successful, they love helping people. That's the only reason why they got there, is because they've helped other people along the way.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Daniel. Sadly, we've come to the end of the show, but this was such a great conversation. Thank you for offering your thoughts and services out to our listeners. Hopefully they take you on some of these offers. But before we go, let our listeners know how to follow you again. You already said they could reach out to you on LinkedIn. What's your LinkedIn? How do they find you there?
It's Daniel Felt, Daniel. My last name is Felt. You can find us all over the place. Even on TikTok, you can find Cura Home. That's Kurahome, or curahome.com. Reach out to us. We love helping other people. If you need routine maintenance or air duct cleaning, or you're looking to build a business, check out our licensing opportunities as well.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yep, you bet. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.